Linda, thank you very much. By the way, for those of you who are still here, let me just say there is a Bible verse applicable. They that endure to the end shall be saved. I am pretty sure that Jesus never spoke during a rain shower. You wonder how I know that. Let me explain. Had he spoken in a circumstance where the rain came as harshly as it did a few moments ago, there would have been another beatitude in the New Testament. Blessed are the brief, for they shall be invited again. Let me first of all just say thank you so much for enduring every kind of element. We've had clouds, we've had rain, we've had bright sunshine. The hurricanes are on their way. We'll see those shortly. I was genuinely honored when I was asked to be part of this extraordinary occasion commemorating 50 years ago this week that the President of the United States came to this county and he launched what was a very noble undertaking, a war on poverty. 50 years ago in this county, almost 70% of the people lived under the line of poverty. You can certainly celebrate that that number has been more than cut in half. But I think all of us would agree that not just in Martin County, but across America, there's still people who are still poor, people who are underemployed or unemployed, people who will experience genuine poverty in their lives. The fact is, we have spent $20.7 trillion as a country. $20.7 trillion as a country in the war on poverty in the past 50 years. And the basic poverty rate across America is pretty much what it was 50 years ago. I don't come here today to say that what LBJ did was wrong, because it was not. The intentions were, in fact, quite honorable and appropriate. The goals, the ideas, the thought that maybe there were things that could be done that would lift people out of poverty. I can't imagine that anybody disagrees with the intentions. But the one thing that perhaps was not fully realized or understood, and maybe we see it more clearly now, and that is that while the government has a role to play in all of our lives in making sure we have decent highways and that we have decent schools, and congratulations to you for having built a beautiful new facility here in your county. But the fact is, government can't replace God. And the one thing that causes people to come out of not only financial poverty, but spiritual poverty, is that their soul is quickened from above. And government can't do that. Wasn't intended to. I will tell you that it's been refreshing to stand here today and listen to many of your local officials and school leaders openly declare that their first allegiance is to the Lord Jesus Christ and to the holiness of a Creator God. How refreshing that is. But I think all of us who have ever spent a day of our lives in poverty understand that part of what changes our circumstances is not the circumstances. A fellow was one time visiting with a friend of his, and his friend said, "How are you?" He said, "Oh, I'm doing all right under the circumstances." His friend said, "Well, what are you doing up under there?" I'm afraid that a lot of us live under our circumstances. And people who, if they find themselves in a point of financial poverty, may say, "There's nothing I can do. I'm stuck." Well, the greatest message in this country, and the greatest message certainly for those of us who can look to a God above, is that where we start is not where we have to stop. And it's something that is deep within us if it's placed there by those who encourage. I spend a lot of my time today going to banquets and speaking to large groups of people, and sometimes sitting up at a head table. I often watch during the banquet as the people carry heavy trays and bring food to the table and serve, and I watch, and sometimes it looks as though people completely ignore the extraordinary hard work that's being carried on by those who serve the food to the tables. And I've often remarked, I've got a lot more in common with the people who are working in the kitchen than I do the ones sitting at the head table. Folks, I grew up understanding how to work in the kitchen. I had to learn how to sit at a head table. It was not natural to me. I did not grow up wearing suits and ties. I am one generation away from living in the kind of poverty that some of you could relate to. My mother grew up in a house with dirt floors and no electricity, the oldest of 7 brothers and sisters who didn't get to finish her education because it was her duty to help make sure there was enough food on the table for the younger ones coming along. My father never graduated from high school. Didn't matter how nice the high school was, he never graduated from high school, didn't get past the 10th grade. And that was further than his father got, and further than his father before him got. The fact is, if I look up my family tree, which my father told me never to do, he said, "Son, don't look up that family tree. There's stuff up there you don't need to see." And the old man was right. I looked up there, and there's stuff up there nobody needs to be looking at, I'm telling you. But the one thing that I know is that after finally kind of understanding where I've come from, I realized that there is no male upstream from me who ever graduated from high school, much less went on to college. It was put in me as a child. Work hard, get an education, dream big dreams. Now, why would a kid coming out of the kind of world I come out of ever believe that I could do anything other than just quit high school, go get a job, and eke out a living? It's because somewhere along the way, somebody told me that I am not simply the product of my environment. I am the result of God's plan, and that God had a plan for me, and if I was willing to try to find it, it didn't matter whether I made a lot of money or not. God's plan would lead me to something bigger than myself. And the quickest, most direct way for us to lead people out of poverty is to first lead them to the cross. When people get to the cross, they find out who they are. They find out why they've been created. And they find out that there is a purpose for life that exceeds and overwhelms any possible earthly desires we might ever have. But let's be realistic. One of the reasons that so many Americans are in poverty today is because we have neglected the important role of family. In 2012, families headed by 2 married parents represented only 7.5% of people in poverty. Those children who were being raised by only one parent, 34% of them lived in poverty. In 1964, when Lyndon Johnson came to Martin County, Kentucky, and when he came to this community and said, "We're going to have a war on poverty," only 7% of the children in America were born in a family other than those with 2 married parents. In 2012, 29% of white children, 52.5% of Hispanic children, and 72% of African American children are living in households with only one parent. It is very difficult for children to be able to break loose when so much of the family resources are geared just to the very fundamental, basic necessities of life. I understand fully that what I'm saying is not politically correct, nor will it always be popular. But let's be clear, this is not a political issue. This has nothing to do with Democrats, Republicans, independents, libertarians, or none of the above. This has to do with the basic sense of civilization, that the stronger our families, the stronger our communities. And the stronger our marriages, the more hope and opportunity we have in our communities. We should never apologize or be afraid to encourage people to get married first and then have babies rather than have babies and then get married. It's the way it works.